Have you ever been so angry that your hands started shaking, your heart was pounding, your mind was screaming with things you wanted to say, and then, without warning, tears appeared? Not because you were sad, not because you were hurt, but because you were angry. For many people, this is one of the most confusing emotional experiences they have. The moment tears show up, everything changes. People assume you're upset. They assume you're fragile. Sometimes they stop listening to what you're actually saying. And that can make the anger even stronger. Because the tears aren't the message. They're just the thing everyone notices first. Most of us think emotions work like separate rooms. Anger in one room, sadness in another, fear somewhere else. But inside the brain, emotions are far more connected than we realize. They share the same emotional highways. And sometimes, those highways become overloaded. Imagine your emotional system like an electrical circuit. As frustration builds, more and more energy enters the system. At a certain point, the brain needs a release, not because you're weak, but because every system has a limit. And for some people, tears become that release valve. When you're angry, your body enters a state of high alert. Your muscles tighten, your breathing changes. Stress hormones flood your system. Your brain prepares for confrontation. From the outside, it looks like emotion, but underneath, it's biology. Now here's where things get interesting. For many people, anger didn't feel safe growing up. Maybe expressing frustration led to punishment. Maybe disagreement caused conflict. Maybe being angry made people withdraw their affection. So the brain learned a hidden rule. Anger equals danger. And that lesson doesn't disappear when childhood ends. As adults, anger rarely arrives alone. It brings anxiety, fear, helplessness, rejection, all at the same time. What feels like one emotion is often several emotions colliding together. And when the emotional weight becomes too heavy, the tears appear. Imagine sitting in a meeting. Someone interrupts you, then interrupts you again and again. You stay calm, you stay professional, but inside, frustration starts building. You finally decide to speak up, and suddenly your throat tightens. Your eyes fill with tears, not because you're sad, because your emotional system has reached its limit. Now picture a teenager arguing with a parent. They feel ignored, misunderstood, dismissed. Their anger grows stronger with every sentence. But instead of yelling, they start crying. To the parent, it looks like sadness. But underneath those tears is a completely different message. I'm angry because I don't feel heard. The same thing happens in relationships. Someone spends weeks holding back frustration, trying not to start an argument, trying to stay patient. Eventually, they decide to talk about it. But the moment they begin, their voice cracks, their eyes water. The tears aren't replacing the anger. They're arriving alongside it. Sometimes there's no argument at all. Sometimes the anger is directed inward. You make a mistake, miss an opportunity, fail at something important. You become frustrated with yourself. And suddenly you're crying alone in a room. Not because you're weak, because self-directed anger can overwhelm the nervous system just as easily. This is where the cycle begins. You cry during conflict. Later, you feel embarrassed. You replay the moment over and over. You tell yourself, I shouldn't have reacted like that. And now, a new emotion enters the story: shame. The next time conflict appears, you're not just worried about the conversation. You're worried about crying. You're worried about losing control. You're worried about being misunderstood again. And that fear increases emotional intensity before anything even happens, which makes tears even more likely. Most people see tears and assume sadness, but think about a pressure valve releasing steam. Nobody mistakes the steam for the source of the pressure. It's simply evidence that pressure existed. Your tears may be doing the same thing. They're not the problem. They're a signal. So maybe the question isn't, why am I crying? Maybe the better question is, what emotional load is my mind carrying right now? That single shift changes everything. Because now you're looking beneath the symptom, toward the cause. Psychologists have discovered something fascinating. When you put emotions into words, their intensity often decreases. Instead of saying, "I feel terrible," try saying, "I feel angry. I feel frustrated. I feel dismissed." Specificity creates clarity, and clarity creates control. The body influences the mind more than most people realize. When emotions rise, slow your breathing, especially your exhale. Longer exhalations send a message to the nervous system, a message that says you are safe. And sometimes that's exactly what the brain needs to hear. If difficult conversations overwhelm you, write first. Put your thoughts on paper. Organize the chaos before expressing it. Writing helps transform emotional energy into structured language. And language is easier for the brain to manage than raw emotion. Most people attack themselves for crying, but self-judgment only adds more emotional weight. Instead of saying, "What's wrong with me?" try saying, "My nervous system is overwhelmed right now." One response creates shame, the other creates understanding. And if tears do appear, don't assume the conversation is over. You can cry and communicate. You can feel emotional and still be strong. You can have tears in your eyes and still deserve to be heard. The goal isn't perfect control. The goal is honest expression. Because the truth is, anger that becomes tears is often carrying a deeper message, a boundary that was crossed, a need that wasn't met, a truth that remained unspoken. The tears are simply revealing where something important exists. The next time anger turns into tears, don't immediately see it as weakness. See it as information, a signal from a mind carrying more than it can comfortably hold. Because sometimes the tears you try hardest to hide are pointing directly toward the part of yourself that needs to be heard the most. And maybe that's what they were trying to tell you all along. Subscribe for more psychology, self-awareness, and human behavior content.